It's lovely to see everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you all are. My name is Alison Humphrey. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Global Strategy Lab at York University in Toronto, Canada, and the Immersive Storytelling Lab also at York. And I have the very, very great honor of being a coordinator of this fantastic project of art times AMR. Never sure how to actually say the X's when we're doing something like this, but this project has grown out of a workshop that we had 1 year ago at the Wellcome Trust in London, England, assembling an incredible group of artists, policymakers, policy experts, and scientists talking about how to use art to bring AMR to life for the wider world, for people who don't normally think about antimicrobial resistance and its role in their life and all of our lives. So I'm going to be just throwing a question into the chat. Where are you based, the audience? Where are you coming from? And what drew you to this event? What are you interested in learning today? If you want to just put your answers into the chat, and at the same time, we're sharing the results of our poll. Looks like your work involves most often health science research, policy research, social science research, a fair bit of community engagement as well, some communications, and then quite a smaller amount of curation, design, and visual arts. So this is really good for us to know where people are coming from, what your kind of expertise is, and what you might be hoping to get out of this meeting. There we go. We've got one thing in the chat. Fantastic. Somebody from Nigeria who's always been invested in AMR and everything it entails, which drew me to this webinar. Thank you so much. We're going to, as we're getting ready to go, we're going to be charge up my creativity, which has died over the years. I think all of us from our childhood need a little bit of a booster shot. That's fantastic. Brilliant. All right, so as people are throwing those things into the chat, I'm going to just tell you the format of this this webinar. We've got an introduction by two people who work in the curation space in museums. Then we're going to be going into the first of the teams, which is called Microbial Realms, and that'll be Madhushri Kampong. They will be presenting their first project. Then we have the next project called Genesis 1928, and that is going to be presented by Becky, Lucinda, Rosie, Mercy, Madhu, and Julian. And then we will move on to the team for Surgeon X. It'll be Sarah with videos from Vanessa, Michael, Mirad, Rob, and Bhakti, and another Sarah. And then at the very end, we're going to have a half an hour for Q&As. So for those people who can't make it for the full hour and a half of this event, please feel free to throw your questions into the Q&A rather than into the chat. And if you can't stick around to hear the answer for the question that you've put in, then this whole thing is being recorded. We will be sending out the recording of the video on YouTube about 2 days after the event, and you will be able to come back and see your answer from your question. All right, thank you so very much. And I'm going to pass over to Sheldon, who is here virtually by recorded video. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheldon Paquin, and I work at the Science Museum Group, which is the umbrella organization for the 6 national-level science museums in the UK, with the flagship being the Science Museum in London. My role is to present and adapt contemporary science issues in our international projects, ensuring that pressing science matters of today are presented in such a way that audiences from around the world would still connect and appreciate the content of our museum exhibitions. People around the world in different cultures and different geographies experience and engage with museums in really different ways. So we need to make sure that the way that we're telling stories matches how they actually want to receive them. Way back in the before times, we had an exhibition project funded entirely through Wellcome to tell the story of antibiotic resistance to visitors in the UK, India, and China. To do this effectively, we ran extensive research into how people engaged with this amorphous subject and how to describe an otherworldly, impersonal, and multifaceted subject to lay people in very different cultures. As a result, we toured very different versions of the resulting exhibitions that we called Superbugs, the Fight for Our Lives. Depending on what country and city it appeared in, it looked and felt very different. Overall, Superbugs tells the story of antibiotic resistance as a journey of scale. Starting in the microscopic world, visitors can see real colonies of pathogenic bacteria and get a glimpse into their day-to-day lives on their own terms. Hunting, building communities, reproducing, defending themselves, and swapping genetic material. Then we move on to the human scale, where we meet real people being directly affected by antibiotic resistance in different and surprising ways, from family doctors to farmers, from patients to legislators and inventors. Finally, we look to the global scale of antibiotic resistance, seeing how new networks of researchers are forming, how we can track plasmids around the globe, and going to exotic places like Icelandic glaciers or salivary glands of Komodo dragons to find the next generation of antibiotics. It was critical that in the presentation of these stories that we show bacteria as a fascinating and exciting force of nature, worthy of curiosity and respect, not fear and panic. We would look at bacteria the same way that we might see a lion, a powerful creature with an important role in its ecosystem, while also acknowledging that it's probably good to keep a safe distance too. In the UK, we found very consistently that audiences here cared deeply about the global perspective, seeing how everyday people were being affected by AMR and being exposed to authenticity in everything. The British version of the exhibition really embraced the grainy world of electron microscopy, the choppy video footage of bacteria in action, and seeing real historic objects like a petri dish of penicillium grown from Alexander Fleming's Nobel Prize-winning sample from 1928. It also showed the weird and whimsical world of AMR, challenging visitors to try and identify pneumonia on the sound of pigs coughing, playing a digital game trying to present a global outbreak, and hearing Alexander Fleming's voice warning about the rise of what he called educated microbes all the way back in 1945. Overall, this exhibition was an exercise in the question of why should I care about AMR? In China, we found that audiences were more focused on hard science. What is the microbiology happening inside bacteria or infections that is making them harder to kill? What mathematical models are being used to track outbreaks of pan resistance? The overarching question answered in this version of Superbugs was, what are the mechanisms of this problem that make it so serious? In India, visitors were motivated by the national sphere, how the people and policy in their own backyard was changing to reflect a new reality of fewer antibiotics being available. Critically, we knew that about 1 in 10 people visiting the exhibition would not be functionally literate, so we sought to have as much visual storytelling as possible, tapping into local storytelling traditions like street performance and puppetry to create a narrative. The question being answered in India was, what should I be doing to help? Superbugs was positively reviewed globally and would have been far more beloved if a certain more acute and popular pandemic hadn't eclipsed our PR in 2020. Overall, Superbugs was visited by about 3.5 million people worldwide, appearing as 14 different versions in 18 venues across 9 countries, including appearing at the UN General Assembly in 2019. A lot of this success was linked to presenting the story depending on the host venue, adapting our storytelling as we went.
Thank you so much, Sheldon, and I will throw to Emily.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you again for your patience. So, who am I? Very good question. I'm Emily Scott Deering, and I'm an independent curator and public engagement consultant. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm the public engagement and involvement lead for my wonderful client, the Fleming Initiative, who are a partnership between Imperial College London and Imperial College London Healthcare NHS Trust. I'm going to literally pick up the story where Sheldon left off at the Science Museum in London, where I worked for almost 17 years. While the Superbugs exhibition was in development, I was busy as the lead curator of the Science Museum's medicine galleries. And I'm here to make the case for exhibitions as storytelling experiences, told through words, images, and so much more, from artworks to object displays and room sets to digital media. The medium of exhibitions makes time travel possible and journeys down the microscope and into that world of microbes a reality. And it's also a world where, crucially, visitors can choose their own path through your story, consuming it as the curator has laid out, but in their sequence, at their own pace, and navigating from one scene to the next as content catches their eye. So whilst the Science Museum's Superbugs has completed its highly successful international tour, we're taking that learning and we're beginning our own exhibition project. It's one that has the same core principles, same core purpose, but a slightly different opportunity when situated not in a national museum, but within a laser-focused AMR research, policy, and engagement initiative. Our story begins in London, almost a century ago, in September 1928. Alexander Fleming famously discovered penicillin in his lab on the St Mary's Hospital campus, where we, the Fleming Initiative, are now based. And this would begin a sequence of research and innovation breakthroughs culminating in a golden age of healthcare, and later to the awarding of the Nobel Prize for Medicine to Alexander Fleming, Howard Florey, and Ernst Chain. In their Nobel Prize acceptance speeches, they acknowledged the multidisciplinary efforts needed to unlock penicillin's therapeutic properties, but they also warned of the danger that we now face, the danger of antimicrobial resistance. And so the next chapter in this story is set in 2028, the centenary year of penicillin's discovery, when we'll be opening our doors to the Fleming Centre London on that St Mary's Hospital campus where the discovery was made. This flagship research and engagement hub is set in and built up from the last remaining Victorian canal side warehouse on the Paddington Basin. In the image you're looking at, you can see the brickwork of the ground and first floors that were that long-standing warehouse. And you can see those large warehouse openings. That building, those first two floors would have been there in Alexander Fleming's day. What we're building up to create is really a physical manifestation of the multidisciplinary approach that the Fleming Initiative recognises is needed to attack the complex challenge of AMR from all angles. So the building combines labs, clinical research space, policy and behavioural science workspace, convening space, and most excitingly to me, a free public exhibition, event space and cafe where we can really actively engage and involve local people, particularly young adults and families with secondary school age children, who we see as the change makers of tomorrow in our work. So let me share some early steps in our exhibition making journey, starting with what we're seeking to achieve. We talk about a blue planet moment for AMR. For international viewers, that's a reference to a documentary, a David Attenborough documentary that really changed perceptions around environment and plastic pollution. So when I use that reference, I mean that we all know that AMR is still invisible to too many, and we seek to turn that complex science into something much more widely recognised, into something that's recognised as being urgent and a shared responsibility. And we want to do this in a hopeful way, inspiring wonder and pride in the antibiotics that underpin our modern healthcare, in the heritage that this story builds on, and in today's collective effort to address the crisis of AMR. We want to provide tangible actions, practical steps for individuals, families, and communities. And we want to leave those visitors to our exhibition empowered, feeling confident that they can play their part in tackling AMR. As with all our work, we recognise the value of working with the public to meet them where they are, to build trust and to make sure we get this story right so it really connects with its audience. We've had great fun working actually just in the last few weeks with local young people in creative consultation sessions about our exhibition, the key themes of which you can see captured here in the visual minutes that we recorded as we worked with them. So here's what's emerging in terms of what the exhibition will be. A place where visitors are invited not only to discover, but to contribute to the past, but primarily the present and future of AMR research. A place that provides a vibrant showcase for the cutting edge innovation that will be happening actually in that same building and brought to life through storytelling, through art and interactivity. We hope the exhibition will be an invitation for the public, yes, to get inspired, but also to get actively involved, offering a kind of dynamic test bed, a place where we can experiment and be creative and find solutions together. With reference to a few earlier projects of mine, here's a sense of what we're hoping to create. We want to make the invisible world of microbes visible. We seek to gamify complex concepts so that our visitors can learn through doing. We want to include relatable, emotionally engaging personal stories, whether that's from patients through to experts tackling AMR. But the main thing I want you to take away, and that I'm particularly excited about, is that this exhibition goes beyond offering education and inspiration. We're thinking of it as an extension of our research and policy thinking spaces. So what might that look like? Well, it could be working with our visitors to prioritize and frame research questions, or even to fully co-design research studies or exhibits. It might be visitors contributing their lived experience or their views at temporary pop-ups within our exhibition, bringing new research questions and policy issues to the floor of the exhibition. It might be using our visitors, inviting them to be citizen scientists, gathering data, analysing data. Or it could be take simple forms, voting through simple analog interactives, for example, on public health messaging or antibiotic packaging options. As a pilot, we've been, this time last year, where we were creating a playful yet purposeful pop-up installation at Paddington. It took an analog interactive quiz format, as you can see here, and it really tested public understanding and attitudes and appetite for action on AMR. With content developed in conversation with policymakers, it gathered over 700 data points on our questions within a single day. We're keen to share resources like that pop-up, and as we work towards our permanent exhibition, we'll be continuing to pilot creative means of actively involving public in tackling AMR. Testing that idea of pop-up exhibits as a framework for people-powered research and policy engagement. So please do get in touch if that's of interest. Do you have a great AMR research or policy question that we could invite the public in on? We're always interested in working with new partners in new settings, and we'd love to hear from you. This was our very latest pilot, which ran just a couple of days ago on the billboard at Piccadilly Circus in London, an AMR public awareness campaign with public contributions, relatable human stories at its heart. I hope that between Sheldon and myself, we've whetted your appetite for exhibitions as purposeful storytelling tools, and I hope you'll watch or even get involved as the story of the Fleming Centre exhibition continues. Thank you.
How utterly brilliant. Thank you so much, Emily and Sheldon, from afar. Sheldon is actually currently in India right now on the road. It's fabulous to have this as a kind of context setting, because that's what curators do for the next three teams. So what we've got is three projects that have received seed funding from the Wellcome Trust through the Global Strategy Lab's AMR Policy Accelerator. This grew out of, as I said, the two-day workshop we held at Wellcome last year on World Antimicrobial Awareness Week. And groups that sort of formed out of that workshop chose their own adventure. So they could do anything to use any form of arts to raise public awareness of AMR, but they chose storytelling, and not just storytelling, but fiction, which is a lot more rare in the world of AMR. And not just fiction, but all three of them in some way are doing speculative fiction. So I'm going to pass you along to the first group, Marushri and Kampong. And as we go, please put any questions you have into the Q&A box, and we'll do one big Q&A for all of the groups at the end of the session. Thank you. Over to you, Madhu. You are muted.
Hi everyone, good evening from India. So let me just briefly introduce us before we move on. I'm Madhushri. I'm an independent art science curator and a designer from India. And with me is my amazing colleague Kampong from Moru, Thailand. He's also a science communication specialist and an amazing, amazing illustrator. So we're really pleased to be here today evening to share with you guys a bit about the project that we've been developing over the last 6 months or so. To dive right in, what we're making is a game which is called Microbial Realms. And this is inspired by D&D, which is Dungeons and Dragons, which is an immersive role-playing game where you as players step into the shoes of different characters and together campaign or go through a sort of adventure. This adventure, particularly that we built, is about a group of healers in a world where antibiotic overuse has created a resistance crisis, and these healers are tracking down a superbug called omega 7. And this game was really built with two major sort of goals in mind. Kampong and I both work with a lot of young people through our work, and we felt that gameplay was a great way to get young people interested in and to have real stakes in understanding both the mechanisms but the socio-economic and political issues around AMR. So there are, of course, some educational goals of the game, which we mentioned here, that so that because we're looking at young adult students in high school or in undergraduate colleges, that they should be able to understand how microbial resistance develops, how proper antibiotic use can happen, recognize the consequences of misusing antibiotics, and appreciate that there are different ways to tackle it rather than just using antibiotics. And we also wanted them to understand that finding new antibiotics is an extremely challenging process, and all of this comes out through the narrative of the game itself. Given that both of us are like illustrators and artists, we also wanted the game itself to be something that was challenging and exciting for young people to play. So it's quite different in that there is no sort of you don't play against other players, but all the players play together and cooperate, which was very important for us from the concept point of view, which is the idea that AMR in the real world also requires people in different positions to work together to actually be able to tackle the problem. So as a part of the seed funding, we are developing the entire concept of the game, including a game master's guide, different characters, sheets, a dice, a map, and so on. And you're going to see all of this as we go ahead. But just to give you a sense of how the entire game comes together, the game is actually facilitated by a game master who we imagine in the initial days would be either a teacher, a facilitator, an educator, a science communicator, but can eventually become the students themselves as they create new campaigns that they can play with this game. And you kind of play it on a tabletop with your own characters as you go through the entire campaign of the story. To tell you a bit about the story itself, right? The story takes place in this world, in a sort of fictional, as Alison said, a speculative world where people have always been using antibiotics, but overuse has led to the creation of a superbug called omega 7. And our healers are sort of the underdogs of the story, and they lose their own city, which comes under this antibiotic crisis, and they try to track down omega 7 and they follow it into a different land. And in this land, antibiotics are not being used in the same way. So here they come into this new world with antibiotics of their own, but they meet a community of people who aren't using antibiotics in the same way. And they try to find omega 7 in this land. Now, as they go through this land, they find different locations where each location becomes the site of a specific campaign. Our four healers first end up in a village, they then move to a farm, and then they move on to the capital city, finally tracking Omega 7 down to the sewers of the city. Now, the reason for having these different kind of locations is because we did not want to focus on antibiotic use just within a hospital, right? The fact is that whether it's in Thailand or whether it's in India, antibiotic use is much higher, say, in the agrarian the space, right? So the fact that farmers use a lot of antibiotics is something that most people don't realize. So that's the reason to also have the village and the farm settings where you could see antibiotic use in very different conditions. And of course, in the city, in the hospital, but also the sewers to talk about how antibiotics come back into the wash system. Through each of these campaigns, the four characters actually have different specialities, right? And we're going to tell you a bit more about them. And while I get into each of these characters, we would love for you to try to think about which character you would like to play, but also so that you can give us some feedback on whether you think some kind of character is missing, right? Uh, Before I dive into the details of this, just want to place a few like key game mechanic words out there, which are important for those who aren't so familiar with D&D to understand. I think the most important thing that we'd like you to focus on is that there's something called resistance points. And now this is quite different from what you would typically find within any standard kind of game you play, right? So your players have health points, they have attack points, the microbes have health points and attack points, but the resistance points is something different, right? Depending on how the players use antibiotics during their interactions with the microbes, these resistance points change, right? And this strategically bad use of antibiotics would lead the resistance points of the microbes to increase, making the game significantly harder as the players go along, trying to mimic real life conditions of how antibiotic resistance is created within microbes. To give you a better sense of this, let me show you like a quick sense of what a gameplay mechanism might look like, right? And this is a really simple animation to give you a feel for it. So you have your four characters here, you have your microbes. The microbes have both a health bar as well as a resistance bar. So now, for instance, one of our characters is something like a microbiologist who can investigate what kind of bacteria this is. Once they identify it, they could use beneficial bacteria to reduce the health of these microbes. They could also be a public health specialist who sort of uses the surroundings to reduce the strength of these microbes. You also have people who can increase the power of the different characters themselves, and then you can attack these microbes and reduce this. So this would be a sort of ideal strategy in the way that you could play. But it does not come out as obvious to the players because this is something they develop and figure out as they keep playing the game. Um, as we just then dive into further the characters themselves, I'm going to tell you a bit more about them from the conceptual end, and Kampong is going to come in and tell you a bit more about them from the design end in a few minutes, right? So the first character, of course, is the druid or the microbiologist, right? And he has his sort of friendly bacteria. You can see these Petri plates on his back. He can actually culture them and create them. His main role often is to analyze the bacteria. Each bacteria comes up as a blank space for the players, and the first thing that they have to do is actually analyze that in order to understand how they could actually combat it. And this is really important because this reflects real world things where the triage process is really important in understanding what kind of infection you have and what kind of antibiotics you should use for it. The next character who's sort of extremely important as well is the cook. This is the character who creates antibiotics. He's sort of analogous to a pharmaceutical researcher. And he can create different potions and things that can help the different healers level up and increase their attacks. Now, he also has a sort of side quest over the longer period of the campaign to see if he can develop new antibiotics. And that is something that's really challenging throughout the game. The next character, and this is sort of the paladin, or those of you who are familiar with gaming terms, the tank of the sort of game, where his role is really to dispense the antibiotics, and he becomes sort of the main powerhouse but in the sense that he has two very specific kinds of powers, one which is to give out generic antibiotics and the other is to give specific ones. Now, the specific ones can only come into play once the microbiologist has identified the bacteria, and you can't use this power until then, right? So this sort of connects the process in the mind of the players. And it's also a fact that these attacks have something called a course, and only if you complete the course would you be able to sort of get the highest hit. If you don't, actually the resistance points of the microbe increases, right? And this is sort of how the resistance points get tied in to the antibiotic used by the players themselves. The last character, and so I would say the most important strategically really, is the public health specialist, or the mage in this case. And this character was really important to bring in because it also shows that there are other environmental interventions that one can do to reduce bacterial virulence in the environment, right? And it's not only about using antibiotics. And this character is also strategic in the sense that he can decide in what order players play, which kind of comes back to this idea that the public health aspect of the entire thing is can decide how different people in society kind of work together to attack a problem like AMR. There's a lot more detail in this, and we are very happy to share that with those who are interested to dive into deeper on further game mechanics. But I'm going to hand over to Kampong now to tell you a bit more about the design of the characters.
Thank you, Madhu. Actually, we discussed a lot about the design, and after that, I decided to come back to my workplace, which is the Moru or Mahidol Oxford Tropical Medicine Research Unit. We have our CAP, or the Community Advisory Board. So we asked them three of question and asked them for the comments or feedback on the design, and we decided that our character will have no gender and no race, so every people can play together. And one of our CAP members said that he want our character to have the identity of Asian people in this game. So we decided to put some pattern and design on the clothes to resemble the Asian culture, like Indian pattern, Japanese, Chinese, and also Thai pattern on our characters. Next slide, please. So to show the young people the germ, because the germ is so tiny, so we designed that if we want to show them like to be more detailed and like enjoyable, we think that in this setting the microbes actually in the size of dogs to the bear, so we can fight them like more fun way. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And this is the early design of the microbe that we think about, the mycobacterium, the staphylococcus, E. coli, and Vibrio. And the omega-7, I still thinking like the way to make it like a more powerful but not too scary, because this game is not about like make people think that a microbe is too scary, but we have to fight them because to protect ourselves, not just like to eliminate them or something. Okay, next slide, please. And other than that, we have the NPC, which is non-player character, basically the people who live in this game world, and we try to put our Asian culture in it. And then they will have like the clothes, and you can see like the hat is like the farmer in India and Thailand use, and the pattern of the clothes that wrap around the neck, and also they have no gender and race at all. And also we have the items card that each character can use. You can use the microscope to better identify bacteria. You can have soap to slower the infection or the spreading of the bacteria, and you can have like something like fungal extract that can be used in the potion making or antibiotic creation, and also some herbal medicine you can pick in the map. Next slide, please. And this is the it's not just the card or the map. We also have the figurine, and I have my student in Thailand do it. And this is the early design of the figurine in 3D model, and it will be around 5 centimeter high. So and it will be look a bit chubbier than the character design in the card or in the character sheet. But I think it's look cute and is make the game like play like more fun. Thank you, Madhu. Back to you.
Yeah, so I think what we just want to wrap up with and say is that this is still like very much a project that is in progress, and we're very, we're in the later stages of design, but we're moving towards having playtests very soon. So if anyone's interested in being an early playtester, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to get more feedback, both on the science, but on the design as well, and have you come play the game with us, and let us know what you think about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matushi and Kampong. That was a fabulous, fabulous taster, and I can imagine that lots and lots of people are going to want to sign up as playtesters. So what we're going to do is make sure that in the mailing list of the folks that we have here, we'll send out this recording in 2 days, but we'll make sure that we give people a place to get in touch with you if they want to sign up to become a playtester. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
All kinds of wonderful, wonderful comments in the chat. Thank you. Keep those coming. And now I'm going to pass on to the second group, which is Genesis 1928. I believe, Mercy, you're going to be sharing your slides.
Hi, Becky. Let's go right up there. So, hi, just to start, really pleased to be part of the group here, a collective, if you like, artists, science background, public health backgrounds. We're all working together to bring together this project called Genesis 28, or subtitle, if you wish, What If? Okay, so a little bit of a clue there. So basically, on September 28th, 1928, the world changed in a way that would impact millions of lives, for the better and for the worse. Antibiotics, as you know by now, were discovered by Alexander Fleming in his lab in St Mary's Hospital in London. Over the next 100 years, millions of lives were saved and suffering alleviated, and we controlled infections that were once devastating people's lives. Pneumococcal pneumonia mortality dropped by around 30%, between the pre-antibiotic and the post-antibiotic discovery. They revolutionized practice across medicine. Transplants, burns, C-sections, you name it, cancer therapy. It's pretty difficult to find a specialty or a procedure that doesn't involve antibiotics somewhere. And you can see there, hopefully, on the Petri dish, let's have a look, the little example of the mold growing. Alexander Fleming called it the mold juice, I believe, and you can actually see the radius around there, around the fungal growth, which inhibited the bacterial growth, okay? And that's him there looking up to the window, holding his Petri dish and probably identifying that growth. But, okay, try and imagine if Fleming had sauntered back to his lab. He had a post-holiday mindset. He discovered this mold juice, what was penicillin, as we know now, growing on a Petri dish on his messy lab bench. Chastising himself for a lack of good, clean laboratory practice, he decided to throw it out. Well, how would medical history and lives have changed? Now, our project, can we switch on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Our project wants to, next slide, thank you, explore the counterfactual. Okay, what would the next 100 years have looked like if indeed he had thrown this petri dish away? Okay, a world without antibiotics, but also a world without AMR. And this is precisely the framing that we want to draw upon in our project. We want to time travel back to 1928, and through community conversations, we're going to ask, how would that 100 years have looked without antibiotics? And we will hope to do this through community level conversations. I'm going to hand to Lucinda, who's going to explain more about how we're going to put this idea, this hook about what if, into action.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucinda Jarrett, and I am the Artistic Director of a small arts and health innovation charity. Our principles are working through co-production, co-design, and co-creation, and we work through dance theatre and immersive arts. I'd like to begin by thanking the team at the Global Strategy Lab, not only for inviting us here this afternoon, but also for giving us as a collective who are presenting to you this afternoon the chance to explore and develop ideas together across several countries across the globe, as you'll hear later. We work through co-production, co-design and co-creation because this enables communities to develop the stories they want to tell and to develop agency and ownership over those. In our project, Genesis 1928, we want not only to travel across time but through space and work with communities who might be developing alternatives and who might have developed alternatives to antimicrobial resistance had antibiotics never been invented. You may say, why use immersive arts? We believe that immersive arts enables us to see the world through other people's eyes. So if we want to dive into communities who are trying to find alternatives out of necessity or out of practical crises, we need to see the world through their eyes. This slide is an image from a project we did in 2022 in the wake of the pandemic, when young people from Syria wanted to show us what their world was like as they rebuilt it after conflict. The project was to explore different ideas of home. And another context was a Rwandan refugee camp, where young people wanted to share with us how they were making a new world, having travelled from the Congo to Rwanda. No matter how hard we try, working with 360 film can sometimes feel inaccessible, even though you can format it for YouTube on your phone. Not everyone has a smartphone. There are other ways of working, of course, with immersive and digital arts. This was a projection we created across 3 sides of a city square. With guerrilla projection techniques on a bicycle, this technology is very affordable and very simple. And so we're exploring, over the time we have together and over the time we hope to spend in the making of this project, ways to find community voices with them, to discover the stories they want to tell, and find appropriate immersive technologies to enable us to enter their world as if through time travel. One of the reasons we want to work with immersive arts as well is because we believe that together people can make something more than on their own. Another project we did was this project with a youth climate action leadership program. And this is a still from a film they made last year, in fact, that was shared in New York in Climate Action Week. On their own, a young person in London or a young person in Colombia or Myanmar may feel powerless to make a program or a project or an artwork that might have an impact on behavior or policy change. But together, across 20 countries, they can make an artwork that they can share locally that has come from global voices. In this way, although they may feel powerless themselves, they find that they have power and agency by coming together as a collective. One of the research tools that you'll hear from later that we hope to use in our programme is working with finding ways where people might not have authority. Collectively, they can work together to develop authority, looking at ways of authority from perspectives of non-authority. We're particularly interested in challenging the authority of medicine and science from communities that might have other knowledge, other authority that we might not have considered. And in this way, the communities will be able to generate new forms of knowledge that might generate behavioural change. So not only will people come together collectively in the locality, but they'll also come together across countries to make this new immersive artwork. In this way, we hope that our place-based co-creation through immersive arts will find new ways of democratizing immersive arts that are relevant across all countries, but also find new research methodologies to challenge the authority that is difficult, often the authority of science, the authority of medicine in our localities. I'd now like to hand you over to other voices in our collective as they share their place-based contexts where we hope we will travel. We'll travel not only through time and space, but also considering how we might travel. We're not only interested in the scale of the globe, but also the microbiome, thinking of traveling through the cellular structures of our body. The very, very, very small might be the portal where we challenge. I invite you to imagine now you travel at a cellular level to meet the other people in our collective on their journey. Many, many thanks once again for listening, and I hope you enjoy the other stories. I'm now going to hand to 3 people who will talk about the specifics of place-based working. And the first person I'm going to hand over to is a wonderful partner, and I'm delighted that she's here, Rosie Hunter from People's Palace Projects, who will talk about their work. And I'm delighted that she's a partner with us on this project. Over to you, Rosie.
That's lovely, Lucinda. Thank you so much. And we're delighted too. Yes. So People's Palace Projects, as Lucinda said, is an arts research centre. We were founded by Paul Heritage and we are based at Queen Mary University of London. We're both a registered charity and part of Arts Council England's national portfolio in the UK. And you will hear through what I say a very, very strong links to the values that Lucinda's been expressing and the ways that we work. At the heart of our work is a question: what difference can art make for people living in situations of risk, violence, and crisis? And we start from the viewpoint that the arts and creativity are a resource. Can I have the next slide, please, Mercy? Thank you. Our practice is founded in drama and performance, but we work with music, film, photography, pottery, writing, and many other arts languages. Next slide, please, Mercy. Oh, and next one again. And next. Thank you. Lucinda mentioned that we will be working at the pace of trust. So since 2014, we have worked with 2 communities of Indigenous people in Brazil's Alto Xingu region, the Kwikuro and the Wauja. Their lives are massively affected by large-scale farming, which both spreads AMR and also endangers their rivers and the traditional medicinal plants that they harvest from the forest. And these are very serious concerns for the community. Next slide, please. The purpose of the programs that the Global Strategy Lab supports are to inform, to engage, and to inspire to action. This is an event we staged at London's Roundhouse immediately after COP26 in Glasgow. And today, my colleagues are with Piratawara and some other artists at COP30 in Belém. So our work does aim to engage international communities. Next slide, please. The Indigenous people that we work with are very clear. The world needs to engage with their knowledge and with the ways of life that they safeguard. We need to learn from their understanding to change the destructive course that we're on. That is why they are at COP30. Next slide, please. And again, thank you. The Wauja want to use VR technology to help inform worldwide communities so they can learn from centuries of Indigenous understanding about our relationship with the natural world. And we're hoping to bring that to this collaboration. That's great. If you can go on, Mercy. Thank you. So PPP uses art as a research methodology that generates rich understandings of people's real lives. And as you can tell, we see art and creativity as a community resource for resistance and change. So we're really looking forward to this new international collaboration and to joining with the other partners. And I'm going to hand back to Lucinda. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. I'm now going to hand to Madhu to explore the concept of the alternative time travel through the pharmacy.
Hi, everyone. So this, I just have a single image because as Lucinda and Becky have so lovelyly shared, I just want to spend a minute or so building for you an image of a community in India who would be one of the voices in this immersive project. That is the community pharmacy community back here. Now, India, of course, as you all would know, has a large AMR burden, particularly of tuberculosis, which is antibiotic resistant, and we are one of the biggest consumers of antibiotics for human use. We also are a country which has more than 800,000 pharmacies and drug shops, with only about 4% of these being chain pharmacies. Most of these are actually run by members of the community in small towns, small villages. And these spaces almost serve as hubs or centers of neighborhood, centers of people. And they have also become the space where often people go for the first point of treatment. So sometimes even before you go to a doctor, you will go to your pharmacist. And these spaces would not only sell allopathic medicines, but they would also sell homeopathic medicines, day-to-day goods. So these really become these centers of knowledge and community within, these spaces. And I was really keen to bring this often underrepresented voice into this conversation, because this is where, in many ways, antibiotics often are given without a prescription, right? And there is a large amount of no prescription use of antibiotics, and that happens over the counter in these spaces. So these pharmacists actually have a large role to play in how communities engage with antibiotics in our country. And it would be amazing to see how we could bring their stories and their voice in terms of this particular question of how, if antibiotics were never made, how the world would look like, right? And not just because they would have their own perspective to bring, but the fact is, once this is created, they would also have a very strong voice back into the community, where they could take these stories and these learnings back to the people who come to their pharmacies. So for me, this was really important, and this is why we are thinking of bringing this community in as one of the voices in this installation. Thanks, Lucinda.
Thank you, Madhu, so beautifully articulated. And now we're going to hand to Mercy, who's going to explore with us another extraordinary environment that might form one of the rooms of this installation. Thank you, Mercy.
Hi, everyone. Good to see all of you again. And my name is Mercy Kukundakwe. I'm a global health advocate with over 10 years of experience in community-centered public health advocacy, primarily in HIV, TB, and antimicrobial resistance. I'm currently based in Kampala, Uganda, and today I'm going to share a case study on environmental factors to MR among Ugandan communities. So our project is asking two critical questions, which we really need to pay attention, especially if we want to understand the future of our antibiotics. What if antibiotics were never discovered back in 1928? And what if we continue losing them? What will our future generations use? So this is going to be a storytelling experience of looking back, but also looking ahead. Now, as we come back to our communities, we know that there are many communities that have been affected, whose stories remain unheard. And usually this starts in our everyday environment, which we overlook. Now, our work will uplift community voices to show MR's human reality, but also drive dialogue and action, which will provide evidence for science, policy, and funding for One Health approaches. So this is going to be a multi-sectoral effort engaging diverse stakeholders across communities, policy, and science. And we are going to focus on 4 thematic environmental factors, one of them being waste management and infection prevention control, where we understand often where there is waste, it creates microbial hotspots that fuel resistance. And we want to also understand environments, families that are staying around landfills, how they face toxic exposure and frequent infections, hence relying on antibiotics to survive, especially when they self-medicate. And of course, not forgetting the improper discarding of medicines, especially the expired ones, into the environment, which strengthens the bacteria. And lastly, contaminated water, which spreads resistant bacteria to not just humans, but also animals as well as crops. Now, we are going to use more of art-based approaches to tell these stories, film, poetry, etc., to bring these experiences to life. And in turn, we will be able to provide evidence, advocacy tools, as well as scalable solutions that can drive action now, but also in the future. And as we tell these stories, we are building global public engagement safe spaces for storytellers, but also sharing evidence-driven narratives. So in Uganda, MR is human. It is not just science. The environment is already speaking from the illustrations I put in these slides, and this is how we intend as a project to showcase how, why, and when to act before another what if becomes to reality. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and over to you, Dr. Julian.
My name is Julian Brigstock. I'm a reader in human geography at Cardiff University, specialisms in geography of the body and geographies of power and authority. So I'm just going to quickly wrap up by talking about our kind of research approach. As you've seen from these amazing presentations so far, we're really interested and committed to a participatory co-production approach. The idea here is that it's really, really important to try to counter the kind of singular authority of scientific expertise. We need to pluralize and redistribute authority, particularly when exploring kind of existential issues such as AMR. So redistributing scientific authority requires a place-based approach, and I hope you've got a good sense of how kind of grounded in place these examples are. It needs to be place-based because knowledge is always situated, it's always mediated through specific and very kind of material places, homes and landscapes. Where you are has a hugely significant effect on kind of what knowledge is and how it is created and understood. As a part of that, we are super interested in emphasizing the importance of storytelling as a way of renegotiating and exploring scientific knowledge, scientific authority, and really bringing the arts to the center of a research method. So in contrast to approaches that use arts more as a sort of tool for disseminating knowledge that's already been produced by others, it's a way of thinking about place-based arts as an essential tool for producing knowledge and creating what we might call alternative objectivities. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for all of that fabulous and involved process. Really, really excited about what this project is going to evolve into over the next months and years. Now we're going to go to the third project, which is Surgeon X. So I will hand it over to Sarah.
Thanks very much, and so lovely to hear about the other projects. I'm going to try and speed mine up a bit so that we have time for Q&A. So, just going to share screen.
And just as she's sharing the screen, we will run over with Q&A if necessary. So take your full time, Surgeon X.
Okay. Can everybody see the screen okay?
We can see your notes as well.
Right. Let me just try and stop the share. Nobody wants to see my notes. That's not very interesting.
This is all a peek behind the scenes.
It is. And you can still see my notes, or is that better?
Nope, that's the whole full slide.
Perfect. So just to say, as part of my team, we have here today Bhakti Chevan, Sarah Hyder Iqbal, and Rob Purdy. And Bhakti and Rob are lived experience experts who are part of our team. We also work with the brilliant Vanessa Carter, who is in South Africa at the moment and having some time off, some well-deserved time off, but is very, very much one of the producers in the team. So thank you so much for inviting us here today. My journey started, I guess, over 30 years ago in this realm when I was doing an MSc at Imperial in Science Communication. I was really inspired by learning about C.P. Snow's famous The Two Cultures Read lecture, which happened in 1959. Snow was a novelist and a chemist, And he argued that there's a dangerous gulf between the sciences and humanities, including the arts, and that this split was a major obstacle to solving the world's problems. So I think this bringing together of artists and scientists is so vital. And I've spent my career trying to bridge this gulf. But also there's a lot of research and evidence in this space that now shows how important it is that we work together in order to solve these sort of big and wicked problems. So Surgeon X is a manifestation of this. It's a comic book that was created in, sorry, I'm just putting my timer on because I realised that's very important. It was important. It was created in 2016, so pre-pandemic, quite a while ago. And it tells the story of a surgeon, Rosa Scott, who's working in a future where the antibiotics are depleted. The government has introduced an antibiotic rationing act, which is they will only give antibiotics out to those who have an economic benefit to society. So Rosa leaves the NHS and sets up her own surgery. Now, why comics? So comics have a huge and growing audience. In the UK, 30% of adults read or have read comics, and 40% of young people are reading comics at least once a month. We know that globally it's growing. You've got manga, you've got slice of life. It's a really, really burgeoning field. Its growth is driven by digital accessibility, by multimedia adaptations you're seeing in TV and film, but also the diversity of storytelling that can appeal to wider audiences. So in India, in South Africa, around the globe, you're getting a real growth in this area. Audiences tend to, a lot are neurodiverse, there's a lot of ethnically diverse, and audiences are pretty working class, and this comes from data that's been revealed about this. So in our story back in 2017, to build the story world, we worked with surgeons, with scientists, with historians, with philosophers, with ethicists, and it was a multimedia project bringing in animations, documentaries, and podcasts. Rosa has my heritage, which is British Myanmar mix. Her twin is a microbiologist and historian, her father a neurosurgeon, and a brother a tech genius. This allows us then to look at the world of AMR through these different lenses. It's a satirical thriller, so we wanted it to be funny, to be humorous, to kind of take a look at the ethics. The characters are not all good. In fact, many of them have very sort of duplicitous sides to them. And it's that we wanted to explore, the ethics and the conundrums that we face. We have him, Mai, who's a surgical nurse who's also living with antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea. We have Priya, who sells antibiotics on the black market. And this gives us a perspective of her family in India and the disparities between the representation of overuse of antibiotics in the West versus the communities who actually struggle to access antibiotics in lots of other areas in the globe. History is a big part of our story and context, and we see this delivered in various strands in the comic book. So where are we now? So this was created nearly 10 years ago now. Sadly, the artist died. So we had the first volume of 200 pages. We had lots of animations. And very, very kindly, we got the money from the Global Strategy Lab to develop this and to take it to a new level. So we've got a new brilliant artist, Warren Pleece, working with us. And we really asked the question, what's missing from this project? What's missing from this story? So the patient voice, that was a really, really obvious one that's missing. And so we've brought that in. The story starting in the now, I think lots of people have been saying it's not a problem of the future. It shouldn't just be sci-fi. It's happening now. And so we're going to weave in a storyline with Rosa, who is 10 years younger, and we're going to show her inciting instant, if you like, the moment in which she experiences an antibiotic crisis and really, really drives her career in that direction. We want to bring in a global story world. So you're going to hear from Sarah Iqbal in a minute about how we're going to create producers around the globe. I'm going to get out of the way as a writer, and we're going to bring in other writers and artists and storytellers who can tell their stories on the ground and bring them into the online digital experience. We're going to add action. What can we do? Really thinking about what is that piece that people can do, be it a politician, a pharmacist, a patient, a community member. What's the ask? How can we help? Again, using comedy and humor, both in the creation of the project as well as the final outputs. So these are our brilliant lived experience experts. So Vanessa, who is our producer, one of our co-producers, Bhakti and Rob, who are here, who we're going to get to have a little chat with in a bit. Now we've worked with them both on workshops, And we've been thinking about what sort of story can we weave into Surgeon X to kind of really share the narrative of their experiences.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Carter, and I'm a patient with lived experience currently working on Surgeon Extra. It's World AMR Awareness Week, and the theme this year is Act Now, Protect Our Present, Secure Our Future. My one call to action is effective communication and awareness, which is vital to tackling antimicrobial resistance because it builds understanding, trust, and shared responsibility between patients, the public, and healthcare professionals, empowering everyone to use antibiotics wisely and prevent infections.
Hi, my name is Bhakti. I am an AMR survivor from India. In 2017, I was diagnosed with a drug-resistant tuberculosis, despite of having no previous history of disease. My 2 years treatment was stacked with the daily painful injectables and antibiotics, which comes with many side effects like vomiting, nausea, optical neuropathy. Also, my skin tone changed to reddish brown color. The disease stigma made it even harder. But with a timely diagnosis, access to the novel medicines, and family support, I recovered completely. These drug resistant microbes are circulating in the environment. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. It's time to act now to protect our present and to secure our future.
My name is Rob Purdy. I'm a member of the WHO Task Force of AMR Survivor, and I live in Midland, Texas. And I wanted to share an idea with you about how we can protect our present and secure our future during World Antimicrobial Awareness Week. So since we entered the antibiotic era in the 1940s, our life expectancies have doubled. And with that, we have had access to an abundant and cheap supply of antibiotics, which is great. However, because we have focused on antibiotic availability, we have downplayed the importance of a lot of things, specifically diagnostics. So rather than focus on a diagnosis and appropriate care, physicians and patients have decided to start playing the odds, and assumptive prescriptions of antibiotics have escalated to the point where as many as half of all antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. So for Antimicrobial Awareness Week, I think my suggestion to you is to ensure that when you're seeking care, ask for a diagnostic rather than just an antibiotic. Thank you.
And what struck me when having these workshops is that all of them, they didn't just tell the story of what had happened to them. They had built up this immense knowledge about everything from diagnostics to treatment regimes to, sanitation to communication engagement. They had a view on all the different subjects. And so when we created the 2 new pages, which I'm revealing here online, I think for the first time, what we did is we created 3 new characters who sit and game virtually. They're sort of holograms from different places in the world. They sit and they game with Rosa and they advise her. They advise her at different moments in the story. She doesn't always listen to their advice because probably like a lot of surgeons, very much has their own opinions, but they kind of share their stories, but they give advice. And also they are, funny, intelligent people in their own right. They're comms experts. One of them's going to work as a diagnostic expert and one character will be a historian. So where are we going to put this? We want to make all this material available for free. So this is our digital producer, Michael Mensah-Bonsu, who we worked with since 2015 on the first iteration and an app version of the comic. And now we're going to bring it all online and we're going to showcase the material with the films where you can read it online. I'm going to see if this little clip will work, but please tell me if it does or doesn't.
Hi, my name is Michael Mensah-Bonsu, and I'm here to tell you.
Can you hear or see that?
Preview of
Faintly,
the new
yes.
Surgeon X web app. Okay, this app was.
I'm going to see if I can scroll through it.
The app we created back in 2016 for mobiles. This one is browser based, so I hope is that this will mean a lot more accessibility and give a lot more people a chance to find out about Surgeon X and also find out about antibiotic resistance. So let's dive into the comic. If we have a look, we see standard reader, very easy, arrow left, right, take you to various pages. As you scroll through, you can read it as a single page, or you can read it as a double page, and you'll have noticed that there's a red dot that appears on some of the pages. We call this a Wowview hotspot, and this is where we're able to add additional content, but we'll come back to that in a minute. In the top right corner, go right to the beginning. We find out the cover isn't the first page, the index is the first page. At the moment, it tells us about cupcakes, but I have no doubt in the future it will tell us about Surgeon X, and then it'll have a visual guide to how to actually use the app. We try to make it visual, and comic booky, again, to make sure that people are very happy and very comfortable operating the app. It really, really is very easy to use. So we'll scroll back, and this red dot is back. Now, these red dots allow us to showcase additional documentaries and animations in the case of the video, images, and also audio clips that tell a bit more of the story about the comic book world, but also, importantly, the story about antibiotic resistance and the real world. If we have a little click. So in this case, click it. UI comes up. All the UIs are styled to be comic booky. We like the way it just keeps us immersed within that kind of reality. And there'll also be a little visual element for the audio clips.
Poor level of service.
Let's close that down. And then we'll have the image clip. In this case, it's a bio of Rosa. This is the first time we see her acting as Surgeon X. And finally, for the enhanced content, we'll have the video clip. In this case, is the Antibiotic Preservation Act advert. Works just like any other advert. We're also able, if we wish, to maximize, and we hope that in the future we'll be in a position to add captions, subtitling, different languages, etc. So, as well as the enhanced content, we've got the reader modes, got standard reader mode, which is 1 or 2 pages. We've got widescreen reader mode, which again allows us to read 2 pages, again on one screen. Works and means that we can read it on different devices. But then we've got what we call super widescreen mode, which is 1 page on one screen, so it's there for everyone. And in all cases,
that gives you a bit of a flavour of it, but the idea being that when we worked
my name is Michael.
With our team, we very much were thinking about accessibility. How can we maybe translate into different languages? How can people read on their phones, maybe if you don't have access to technology? So we've been thinking sort of quite widely about how we make this available to lots of different people. So thinking about what next, we're going to, so these are the bottom row is our previous funders for the original iteration. Global Strategy Lab funding us for the development, and Fleming Initiative being collaborators in terms of helping us with the science and thinking about who we can interview for the future. What we really want to do for the documentaries is we shot documentaries in 2016. We want to shot updated versions in 2026. We'd love then, for hopefully I'm retired by then, but 2036 to have somebody else shoot the documentaries as well, so that we really get a heritage piece of work where we look at how this has evolved. You know, what do people do, what do people think, and what happens every 10 years, and that will hopefully be part of the story. I'm going to sort of come off the screen a bit and introduce, but this is a Hippocrates who is reminding Rosa to remember her oath, basically. So I'm going to stop sharing screen. And I think now I would love to bring in, we've got Sarah, Rob and Bhakti. So just in the last few minutes, I would love to hear from Rob first. What was your experience of working on this? You know, I think storytelling can be a really nice allegorical way to deal with difficult subjects. What was your experience and your thoughts on the outcomes?
You know, I think that patients and their lived experiences are the best way to storytell. But you have to reach people where they are. And so intertwining that personal and that narrative of, you know, this is what it's like in ways that, whether it's movies or graphic novels or comics books or in some cases TikToks or just an good old fashioned opinion piece is what we have to do to reach people and educate them about AMR. People don't understand it. It's often said it's a very complicated topic, but lived experiences are very simple and straightforward. So regardless how complicated the topic is, communicating through stories is universal. And I think, personally, my experience working with you is amazing. And I'm really excited about the project and actually all three projects that have been talked about today.
Yeah, and I think it's thinking about the audience in a granular way. There isn't this amorphous audience. Everybody's different. They like different things. And so we need all those different sort of approaches to make it work. And also, I really want it to be fun for you guys as well, right? Because I think it can be quite traumatic reliving your story all the time. I want you to enjoy the process as well. And I don't know if we can bring back to you in on that as well. And we'll come back to you, Rob. So over back to, do you want to talk a bit about your experience and what would you like to see happen in the future in terms of the sorts of stories that we share?
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, I would like to say one thing. Initially, when we started talking about AMR, it was just the numbers. Then we started talking about policy making, creating a national action plans. Then we're talking about the stories of survivors. We started humanizing the AMR. And now we are talking to, sharing the stories about AMR to the large audience. So I think this initiative is a great thing that we can target a large audience here. Like comic is a great, source of communication, and it targets from children's youngsters to adults. So I think we are heading to the right direction to communicate this AMR issue, simplifying it through such communication media. So, and working with the Surgeon X project, it's a great experience for me, and it's a new experience as well. Because as a survivor, we just share our stories, but I think this is a new communication media. So thanks a lot.
No, thank you. I think the co-design part is really important and has kind of shifted my thinking a lot. I want to come to Sarah. Sarah Hyder Iqbal is actually listed as me. We're not the same person, which is very funny. But Sarah,
but maybe not.
So Sarah, we've worked together on the past on projects. So Sarah's an engagement specialist in India. In terms of the work you're doing, and you're going to be producing, if we get the funding, you'll be producing the stories and the creatives, etc. in India. What can you just tell us about where you would like to see it go and your experience of working in this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, thank you, Sarah, first of all, for, having us all here. And it was really wonderful to hear about all the other projects. I think for me, this project sits really well at the intersection of, two things I care about, which is, how do people make sense of complex health issues? And I think something I've been doing through Superheroes Against Superbugs, and also how stories can shift how people feel and what's possible, especially in the AMR's scenario. And I think the world we're living in today is deeply complex, deeply interconnected. Like you said, communities are increasingly becoming multicultural. People are moving across borders. Health and political systems are influencing each other more than we would like to admit or believe. And I think a lot of the stories that we've been heard during the course of this, whether it was Pop, Rob, or Bhakti, or Vanessa, is that there are a lot of similarities. I think there are a lot of very similar issues, yet there are these differences. And I think comics like Surgeon X, which are really boldly engaging with a lot of issues that, sometimes we sanitize in science and health communication. And I think that's what I would like to see going forward as we scale up is, how do we bring in these international yet local storylines together and really acknowledge the interconnectedness. And I think this is what the Surgeon Extra has tried to do, is also acknowledge how characters are moving around, how they're connected to each other, especially in within the context of antimicrobial resistance. And I think if you of course bring in storytellers from different regions, you would inevitably bring different styles of communication, of telling those stories, different worldviews, maybe different frames and through which we can look at AMR. So I think that would be an interesting next move I think we could take with Surgeon X. I think there's a really good platform. There's all the messiness and all the complexities and all the different tensions, and also, what are the potential way forward already present in the story. And I think we can add more nuances, both creative and cultural, as we scale up, perhaps.
I think there's a really good point there about how it is a messy space, and I think that we have to acknowledge there's a difference between communications and engagement. So communications, people control the narrative often, right? They want it to be certain messages, that you will behave in a certain way, etc. I think this engagement project I see is a lot messier, which is kind of maybe makes it a bit more risky. But the idea that the stories that emerge from it are from these different spaces, and they might not always be what you want to hear. They will be data and research, and all of that will be informed. But sometimes there will be difficult subject matters that I think we'll have to cover. I'm aware now we're at 3:00, but thank you so much, guys, for speaking, and I hope we get to carry on co-designing and co-working together. And thank you, Alison, and the other projects as well. Hooray, brilliant.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you to your entire team. That is a thrilling, thrilling project. I encourage everyone to read the Surgeon X comic as well as looking forward to this new Surgeon Extra extension of it. So yes, as Sarah was saying, it's messy when you've got a lot of people, a lot of voices coming in. So here we are at an hour and a half. So what we want to do is make sure that we have a time for a couple of questions. But as I said, we're recording this, so anybody who needs to pop off can do so now. I'm going to share very briefly a screen with the link for the page on this entire project. So anybody who wants to keep following any of these projects or all of them, all of the links, the recordings from today, the slides from our pre-show, pre-roll, all of that will be on this page, bit.ly/capital ART, small x, capital AMR. There we go. All right, so just a couple of questions to get everybody talking in the same thing. I think what we're going to do is just sort of open this up to all three of the groups, and please jump in if you have a thought to share. One is from Satyajit asking about while there's a lot of human health in these examples and even environmental health, there seems to be less in the way of animal health examples in order to build a One Health out of those three. Does anybody want to address that? Obviously, it's different for different groups.
I feel like the game people should come in on that because of the farming and the animal, but yes. I think it's in all of the back of the minds for all of us in terms of how the way that we consume food and how animals are treated with antibiotics is a big part of it. But I think maybe Madhu and
yeah, I mean, I agree with Sarah, and Kampong is here as well. Kampong, if you want to add in, I think at least for us, it was important definitely to bring in the more One Health approach. I think an initial concept for the game was to have an entirely naive world where people have never used antibiotics, and actually have the players learn from that world as to how to live without antibiotics. That was a completely different version of the game that we had thought of before. And I think, this idea that it is animal health, plant health, human health, all of that kind of together, that we have to see a bigger picture, especially for young people, I think, because the narrative is often very one-sided, and we are trying to bring it into the game. But how successful we will be is only we'll know post play testing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to add something. For me, it's not just the animal, plant. Other microbes that are not pathogenic is also, a part of ecosystems. So we want to add that. We want to have like a side game, like a Pokemon game that you can collect some non-pathogenic microbes, and maybe they can help you fighting some pathogenic microbes also.
Brilliant. So we have another question, which I'm going to, again, kind of adapt for all three groups. This person was asking how much time did it take to develop the story and characters around the game. But obviously for all three of these groups, you've had this seed funding for a little bit less than a year now. Can you maybe talk about, what your time frame is? Obviously, we're looking at the centenary of the discovery of penicillin in 1928. Could each of the groups just discuss what your future trajectory is in a nutshell?
I don't mind jumping on first. I think a lot of this stuff, it's to do with funding at the bottom. That's the bottom line. So we're writing bids. So we've got this amazing package now, which the development part is amazing because we can show people how the digital space will work, and having that pilot so that people don't have to imagine it from words on the page but can actually look at it really, really helps. So we will be then to package this up, write bids next year. That's how it works. You just sit and write lots and lots and lots of bids and just hope some of them come off, and then you sort of piece it together and you start small and you say, well, what's the minimum we can do for this small pot of money? And then you, as a producer with your producer hat on, you go, well, we can leverage a bit more from here. And then, so I always have stages of, this is what I'd like to do for a minimum. Then if we had this, we can translate into different languages, or we can, add all these different bits to it. But it's very much, when you're doing sort of arts engagements, it's about starting small and then figuring out how you can add on as you progress. And then hopefully by 2028, we'll have this beautiful story world with stories from all around the globe. And in the way that Marvel has its lovely story world and people enjoy that, we'll bring in all the different voices and different creators, and I can get out of the way and read it and enjoy it.
I think similarly, probably all of these projects are aiming to 2028. It's a big landmark, isn't it? Centenary of the launch of penicillin. And it feels like a big landmark. It feels like a funding timeline that's achievable. So similarly, we're looking for engagement funding to develop the place-based co-production research at the pace of trust in all these locations. And also we have some small feed funding to develop the idea of the very, very small. So how is the way we travel to these places? Could we travel through the body, through the microbe? So doing some work with Immersive dance company called Alexander Whitley to explore the very, very small, which is a great place to start. Thank you.
I think probably for us, we, unlike Sarah, who's been working on the comic for many years, I think we just started this year. So we're at a very baby stage at the moment. We are also similar to Sarah, going to keep looking for funding to develop the project. But for us, the next phase is really play testing in a lot of different locations, definitely in Thailand and India, hopefully because of the lovely people as a part of this workshop in the UK and in other places as well. And I think we are looking more at museums and science festivals as places where this can actually connect with audiences, because we do feel that we do need a lot more feedback to kind of iterate this game into its final form. I believe the idea of doing something like D&D was meant to be such that people could shape the campaign as they like, and that's what we're hoping for it to happen, to keep morphing as it goes into the community. So I don't see an end date of it at the moment.
Yeah, and other than that, I want to try this with our CAP, because we have the youth CAP in Thailand and also in Cambodia, and the CAP is in the border area, so we could try people from the youth from different background, not just only in Bangkok, in the capital, but is also in the area that underserved population. So we can a bit change the narrative that to that specific that for them to better understand, because normally AMR problem is not just happen in the capitals, and in many hard to reach area. So we can try with our community advocacy board in the border and in a different place first. in Thailand. Thank you.
That's brilliant. So we'll wrap up with one more question from the audience, which is, I am not an artist or even artistic, alas. How can I contribute?
Can I go first?
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I think all the project, or especially our projects, half of it, yes, is art, but a big chunk of it is not art. So we it's required a lot of people, a lot of knowledge, a lot of feedback from people, a lot of many ideas, not just only from artists or scientists, but from everyone. Because the game is meant to play with many people as possible, and I think it's not necessary to be artists or have the art background or science background to play, because playing is what people can do, right? Everybody play from our birth, so playing not necessary to be artists.
Yeah, I would add to that. I kind of think that if you can make a mark on the page and you can dance around in your room on your own, or you can tell yourself little stories, then you're an artist. I mean, I kind of think that as humans, that's what we do. We create. It's kind of, we do it to relax. And I don't think you have to be a professional artist who gets paid for it to contribute. So I think going forward, we'd be looking for sort of little stories that people could share. And then maybe we partner them with, amazing comic book artists from around the globe, and we can share those stories. I love the idea of democratizing the process. And Sarah, I think you've done some work with this in India, and just anybody with a comic, if you have a pencil and some panels, you can create something. And so I would invite people to have a go. We'll give we're going to have some workshops and tutorials. We've got some amazing Marvel creators, DC creators who are up for running workshops so that anybody can create and contribute. Sarah, did you want to hop on? I think you no, okay.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah, of course.
What you said, Sarah, you don't know, but you do know. I'm not an artist, but what I am is I'm a storyteller and I'm an advocate. And so sharing stories and advocating, which can be as simple as saying, hey, let's play this game, or you should see this game, or you should read this, or you should visit this art. That's something that we can all do. And that's something we should all encourage each other to do. And I apologize for kind of stepping on your talk a bit.
Not at all. Really important. I was just going to say, I hope from what I said, our work is all about immersing ourselves in communities to hear people's stories. And out of that will shape immersive installations that can be in VR, in films, or in galleries. It's really important that everything comes from people first. And when we say co-design, that's at the very, very outset. The idea comes from people who will design what the story is they want to tell and how they want to tell it, and the place-based in a place-based co-production model, they will tell the stories they want to tell, and it's up to us to shape them. But it all comes from people and place. We have nothing without community, and the great thing that artists do is build community through kinship and relationship. We listen and we share stories, but we're nothing if we're not good listeners. So please just get in touch. Storytelling is as much about story listening as it is about storytelling.
Can I just ask bring Bhakti in here, because Bhakti, you're a scientist, you're a science background. I mean, what do you consider yourself an artist, or do you engage with the arts?
I think Rob already covered it. Like, if you're not artist, or if you don't have even a story to share, I think this work is really great, done by every like a game, comic. So we can advocate to people to read the comic, or to play this game, so that we can create awareness about the AMR.
That's lovely, lovely words. Thank you so much. All right. I also wanted to just throw briefly to Demetria, and sorry to put you on the spot, Demetria. Do you want to say 2 words about a comic that the Global Strategy Lab is developing sort of in parallel with this project?
Thanks, Allison. I will just add a few words. I mean, we have been so fortunate to have the opportunity to work with all these artists and storytellers. And from the Global Strategy Lab, we are also working on a project to try to tell the stories of accessing antimicrobials, which sometimes you have these stories from high and middle income countries, but less often from lower and middle income countries. So the issues around actually accessing veterinary services, accessing diagnostics, and so on. So we are right now working on a project where we will be working with ILRI, the International Livestock Research Institute, and with the World Organization for Animal Health to develop a comic that will tell the story of a woman, smallholder farmer, and the issue she has around accessing veterinary services and how gender equity and different perspectives impact her ability to access services, have a livelihood, and support her family. So we'll include information about that project as it evolves. Thanks, Allison.
That's great. So we will definitely be putting that on this page again. So I'll put that link up one more time, bit.ly/artxamr. Please visit that to keep track of how all of this fabulous creativity unfolds over the next months and years. Thank you so much to all of our brilliant panelists, all of our participants. Thank you for everybody who asked questions in the chat or even contributed thoughts. And we're really, really looking forward to seeing how these seeds grow into flowers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.